Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. This is the Global History Lab based at the University of Cambridge, and welcome to a War and Peace dialogue. This is the first in a series of conversations between our teaching fellows and students across the globe. We're going to focus on war and peace and how we can think and rethink what we know about, what we think about war and peace while studying global history. I'm pleased to introduce today's two teaching fellows, Solomiia Rozlutska and Aayushi Gupta. I would like to ask you first to say a bit about yourself and the students you are teaching. Solomiia, maybe?
Yeah, hello everyone. So my name is Solomiia and I'm a teaching fellow at Ukrainian Catholic University. So this is my home university where I was studying it's already my 4th year of teaching this course in UKU, and I'm very happy that today with me are the students from almost all generations of this course. So we have Anastasia Fabirovska. So she is the 1st year graduate of the course, which we had here at Ukrainian Catholic University. Then we have Anastasia Knyazhetska and Marta Kondratyuk. They are from the 2nd cohort of students. And so we also have Stephanie Spritz, and she is like from the latest current cohort of students of Ukrainian Catholic University. It is a pleasure to be here, and I'm very happy to talk with you all and to discuss those very intriguing and interesting questions.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Aayushi and I'm based at Cambridge. I'm a PhD student in history here. And I've been a much younger teaching fellow in comparison to Solomiia. I've been on the program for 2 years. So last year I taught students at the Modern University of Business and Science in Lebanon, who are here represented by Hadil and Gewa. And this year I'm teaching BRAC University in Bangladesh, and on the panel, BRAC will be represented by Aswad and Tanisha, but attending are also several of my students who I'm sure will have lots of really interesting things to contribute.
Thank you very much for the introductions. I just want to start with a few housekeeping notes. So I will talk to the teaching fellows and the students in this roundtable for about half an hour, and then we will open up floor to questions and comments from all our attendees. So please feel free to think about questions and comments, and you can put them in the chat, or just raise your hand to ask them or to say your comment after our roundtable. Okay, so let's start. First, I think I just want to ask you, both the teaching fellows and the students, why you find teaching and learning, studying global history interesting and important today.
Hi, my name is Stephanie. I'm from the Ukrainian Catholic University. I think learning global history at this time and age is really important because it gives us these hidden connections that each country and nation has, with that they're all tied to these interdependent, like Jeremy Edelman likes to say in his lecture, global systems, and how one war in one region can basically like alter food prices on another continent, or how colonial history shape modern inequalities. And I think that that's really important at this day and age.
Thank you so much, Hadil.
Yes, so all what has been said is true. I do want to add that teaching and learning global history are two different things. I'm sure the teaching fellows would tell us more on it, but I've had the privilege to be both a student and a teaching assistant. So throughout both experiences, it was such a journey to not only understand how these events came to be, but also how to get them across to make other people understand how these events happened and who was affected, without erasing any of the history or any of the experiences, especially given the language barrier.
Thank you very much. Eva?
Hello, everyone. As my colleague said, global history is something so beautiful and so important because every one of us came from a different background. I am a public health student, so I'm a bit far away from history and all of that stuff, but it is a great opportunity to know more about history, to know about the people who don't has the sound, who were affected in war or in a way or another, and all of that stuff. In addition to that, it is a great opportunity to know about something related to past because as there's a poem in Arabic that said, if someone don't know anything about his past, he will never know about anything about his future. So that's it.
Thank you so much. Now I would like to ask the first challenge question that I sent to our roundtable speakers before this event. And may I ask the teaching fellows to reflect first. My first challenge question, rather two challenge questions, were what does it mean to study war and peace globally rather than nationally or regionally? What becomes visible or invisible when we shift scales? If Solomiia or Aayushi, if you have any reflections on these questions.
Yes, so
Go for it, Solomiia.
Oh, yeah, thank you. So in my opinion, it first means that you have to move beyond the borders of your individual nations and, understand how everything is interconnected and interdependent, especially in the terms of economics or politics or cultural systems. So I think definitely, let's say, studying war in Ukraine right now helps to understand some very global challenges that world experiencing right now. So, for example, how this war is connected with food shortage in Africa. So I don't think that many people knew about those connections before 2022. But at the same time, sometimes I think that global approach can obscure some local experiences and also emotions and some cultural meanings of the world. So, for example, sometimes the war in Ukraine can be described or reduced to some abstract geopolitical or economic phenomenon, while they don't see some deeper things like colonial legacy or identity or historical justice. And sometimes those things are ignored, but for Ukrainians, they are very crucial in understanding this conflict. So yes, this is my answer.
Thank you, Aayushi.
Yeah, I kind of I sort of do resonate with what Solomiia said about, like, I think there is a real advantage to sort of study, consider historical events like peacemaking or war globally, because you can trace connections between nations and you can kind of study kind of larger economic or social or political forces like transnational movements and solidarities and these kinds of things. But I think that you really do it does sometimes come at the cost of missing out on sort of local regional dynamics, which which I mean, which do kind of shape. We kind of, I think sometimes, and I think that's the case with world history as well. We sometimes we get caught up in drawing connections that we're kind of almost overlooking at the sort of, the kind of regional sort of power vortices or kind of how that's, and how regional dynamics may be shaping war globally rather than the other way around. So I think I think it's a difficult conundrum. I think to kind of, I think it's hard to do both of those two things together. But I think, I do resonate with the point of like obscurity on regional dynamics.
Thank you so much. Any of our student speakers?
I do agree with what both the teaching fellows said. I also want to add that uh, the course had a really great job of connecting both, like trying not to erase the local um, view while also keeping track of the global movements like migration, like trade routes, and how powers, weapons shifted from one country to another. So, for example, when Gaza had a um, had a recent war and had major crises of hunger, of political instabilities, Lebanon was also affected. So that's like an international perspective. But some or a lot of people missed how people in shelters were treated, how many had to cross the border illegally to escape, or how tension in Lebanon rose, affecting people from the south just as much as people in Gaza. So I think the course had a really great job of connecting those two while also showing the world how each country was affected. So not dealing with countries as identities and not stripping away the humanity of the crisis.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to hear your answers and the connections between your answers, and this is basically the first time that we're connecting to groups this way, and I just find it fascinating. Giva?
Okay, so what I want to say, a national lens might focus on local heroes, but a global lens highlights how war are interconnected. So it encouraged learners to see how war and peace are shaped. And in addition to that, it's a kind of zoom out globally. We see large patterns such as the economic systems that shape many regions at once. And it is a kind of a wider scale can also make a local voices or shed light on the local voices that are invisible.
Thank you so much. Anastasia?
I'm from Ukrainian Catholic University, and I think that it's important to remember that methodologies such as microhistory are actually a part of the global history too, because they were intended to showcase specific cases, specific people, and specific groups where global historical movements and global historical impact can be traced. And so I think that when we're talking about whether it's better to talk about war and conflict in a global way or a local way, there's always this like middle point where those two things can be combined. I think that it's very rare where conflicts are looked at from a very limited and very local perspective. As many can suggest that this is how conflicts were portrayed before global history as a methodology emerged. But even when we were looking at specific cases and specific villages that are affected by conflicts, we are still in a way studying global history still.
Thank you. Marta?
Thank you so much. So I wanted to agree with Anastasia because it always seemed to me that global history and microhistory are like two different sides of the same coin. And when I was taking this course, I was only in my second year of studies, and now I'm in my fourth year. So a lot has changed in my understanding of history, of global history in general. But one thing that I remember that this course gave me a really good foundation as as I see right now when I'm researching more into the differentiations in different like methodology, when we are learning about different conflicts, when we are learning about essentially different processes that were happening throughout history, we can look at it from different points of view. We can look at it from some minor groups that were affected or some bigger groups. And I remember that this course gave me this like foundational understanding of it, even though I couldn't put it into words back then, as I remember. It was just something that clicked inside of me. And I think that when we are talking about like conflicts in general, when we are talking about war and peace, I really agree with my professor Solomiia that said that sometimes we can forget that wars that is happening is not only some geopolitical thing that is happening in the whole world globally, it is also something that is happening locally. And I think that when we combine both of those methodologies, essentially, we can come out with something that is really truthful on how the events are being represented.
Thank you very much for all these answers. I think it's amazing that we acknowledge the relationship between global history and microhistory. There was a recent AHRC research network at Oxford, which looked at the connection between global history and microhistory, and not so long ago, a past and present supplement issue focusing on global history and microhistory. So they're really up to date, which is great. Okay, I'm going to ask a slightly provocative question, which is related to our first question, and I'm sure that our TFs will have thoughts on this, because this is something that we keep reflecting on in global history, in the Global History Lab, which is the global history approach, is the global approach itself a Western invention? How can we avoid reproducing imperial or Eurocentric ways of organizing global history? What do you think? How can we avoid being Eurocentric?
I mean, I feel like there are students before me, so I'm gonna let them speak, but I can say something after them because I think Anastasia and Stefania want to say something. So you're muted, Elvira.
Oh, sorry. Stephanie, I think maybe you were first.
I think Anastasia was actually first.
I think that it's very, thank you. I think that it's a very good question. And I think that when talking about what's considered the general like Eastern world or even Eastern Europe, the world seems a lot smaller to maybe certain people who live in those areas. Because, for example, at least the viewpoint that I got living in Ukraine and studying in Ukraine is that the closer you move to what is considered the West, the bigger the world seems to you, because the more you have contact points with other countries, the more you have opportunities to travel, and the more you have also opportunities to meet different people from different cultures, because the West is known to be very multicultural. In comparison to people who in even Ukraine, who oftentimes older people, they live in villages, and they sometimes can even like rarely leave their own region, their own like this very small territory, and the world seems very small to them. So in a way, I can see why global history can be seen as this Western approach, because it takes away from those experiences that are normally very local. It takes away from the experience of people who cannot afford to have this global view of the world in general. However, I can't say that studying history in a global way is always imperial, that it's always colonial. I think that in turn, sometimes it produces the opposite outcomes. Because, for example, in one of my recent courses, one of the articles that we read were about Armenian communities that were living on the territories of the Silk Road, and the kind of economic relations that were formed between Armenians and I think the late 18th century, and how they were integrated into the global economical system of that region. And it showed how those seemingly Oriental and Eastern communities can actually be economically compared and to global Western powers, and how their systems are oftentimes even better organized than those Western powers. And it was shown in particularly in that contrast between them and the systems that they existed in, which I think is also a very global approach. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you very much. Next roundtable speaker, I think it was Stephanie.
I think it's really funny how basically global history sounds really inclusive, obviously, but it did come out of Western attempts to make sense of globalization and Western ideas of empire. So even like the idea of connecting the world usually carries colonial baggage. But if we're trying to avoid that, it's us trying to avoid the idea that history needs to be organized by European, like Europe's timeline. So I think that maybe the global should be just overlapping, contradicting, basically like the world is actually. So the history should not contradict that.
Thank you, Marta.
Yes, thank you. So I agree with previous speakers. I just think that when we are studying history in a global approach, we have to be really careful with case studies that we choose. So they represent not only the Western world and Western experience, but also Eastern one. And that sometimes the similar process are still different in different regions, yes, but that doesn't take away from the thing that is essentially the same process. It just slightly differs, and it doesn't mean that it's bad or it's good. It just depends on the region. And maybe when the global history studies were only starting, there was a lot of more of like this Orientalism and colonialism in it, because not everyone wanted to hear the Eastern voice in it. But I think that now, when we are when we are broadening this studies, more and more people from Eastern countries, they get a chance to speak out about their experiences and speak about how so actually we are not that different from you. We are the same, and we had the same processes as you in the Western world.
Thank you. Habib?
Yes, thank you. I do agree with previous speakers, and I think they have properly explained what is the Western bias on the global approach. I would just add, to avoid a Eurocentric view, I would just ask the oral historian or the writer to ask, is it global to who? So who are we referencing? And when we think about the this kind of link, this reference, we would then outsource to local people. We would outsource to those who have lived this experience, for it to be global to them as well, to be inclusive. And when we do that, we can use their native language, we can use their archives, we can use their voices, and that would give us the global aspect that we're looking for.
Thank you very much. Aayushi.
Yeah, something that I just wanted to add is yeah, in your question, I think I guess I recognize, Elvira, the kind of what you're trying to get at is sort of global history sort of, I mean, they seem to be a Western invention because they sort of, in some ways, they sort of begin from Britain or Europe or America, and it's usually institutions or academics or historians from there kind of thinking about the connections that European imperial projects had with other parts of the world, or American sort of imperial projects had with other parts of the world. And yet, I mean, I think Marta kind of talked about it there being it's connected to colonialism, but also it's connected to then historians kind of critically reflecting on these colonial histories. I mean, anthropology is a very interesting example as a discipline because it was so integrated with the development of colonial knowledge that in the 90s, and anthropology sort of went through a serious kind of self-reflection of the discipline. And and I think world history, or global history, sorry, sort of emerges from this sense of like, we need to think about the connections between the West and the rest, if you will. And I think a way to kind of there are some really interesting ways to sort of turn or reject this this kind of slightly Western bias, if you will, in global history, and that's probably, and that may be like looking at connections between the rest, right? So looking at connections. I mean, one of the things that I really when I was talking to Hadil and Gewa, for instance, when I was saying, it would be great, I would love for you to join this panel, and Hadil and Gewa were both like, oh, well, that's amazing. I wonder what Islam is like in Bangladesh, and this is exactly what we kind of want to encourage, right? Like, shift the center from Europe, from America, or their imperial projects, or thinking critically about their imperial projects, to kind of thinking about what were the connections between other parts of the world, right? Or like, not even other. I mean, why are we using the word other? What were the connections between Bangladesh and Lebanon? What were the connections between Lebanon and Ukraine? Or what are indeed the connections? And this is kind of what we're trying to create or encourage by bringing bringing indeed different classrooms into this space.
Thank you so much. I really like you mentioned the word other and how problematic it can be. Othering, right? It's something that comes up so much in historical research. Giva, do you have a comment on this?
Yes, in addition to what my instructor Aayushi said, it is about, or the concept of a global history was first institutionalized by the Western universities. So I think the key challenge is that the term of a global has often been defined through Western eyes, and centering Europe as the connector of the world. So that's it.
Thank you so much. I would like to talk about now a few contemporary challenges that we have globally, and this is something that comes up in teaching fellow discussions a lot, such as AI, or climate change, or digital warfare. These are all topics that we can discuss, and I just would like to ask you to reflect on how these global challenges that we all experience reshape the ways in which we interpret history and apply historical lessons. If any panel members.
Maybe I can start then. Yes, so it is about AI and climate change. So I think that definitely technologies and AI, they change the type, not the type, but the character of the war, like its personality, if I may use this word. Yes, so it's definitely also chose other ways of influence on people from the side of government and also of the aggressor, etc. So especially like in case of Ukraine, like digital tools like drones, satellites, imagery, or artificial intelligence are right now very crucial, and they indeed transformed military ethics and strategies as well. Also, these technologies, they can even shape post-war recovery and healing of wounds in some way. Yes, so they can of course help to improve the recovery of the soldiers and make their healing much faster. But at the same time, if we will have a look, let's say, on climate challenges, I also see here that since now we are like more interconnected, yes, so unfortunately wars, they also provoke a lot of damage for climate and environment, and they can also shape another dimension of the war. And show how dangerous it can be in a long-term perspective, in this kind of like so-called longue durée, yes, in this long-term perspective. So let's say in Ukraine we had a huge devastation and the destruction of Kakhovska Dam, and the devastation of Askania Nova. So this was the natural reserve, and unfortunately, a huge number of very unique animals and plants, they were like basically, yes, destroyed. So, and unfortunately, this kind of catastrophe, they can have effect not only on Ukraine but also on whole world globally. Yeah. So.
If I can jump in, I think this is actually a really if we can broaden it to kind of think about digital technologies, for lack of a better word. But I think that and climate are actually perhaps quite interesting and productive ways to think about these kind of again, this is not a perfect term, but South-South connections, which is what some scholars are kind of using. But so for example, what I find really interesting, sort of having taught at MUBS and now at BRAC, is kind of the sort of way the different roles that digital technologies have played in the contemporary history of both those regions. And I mean, Hadid and Giba, we were sort of talking about drone attacks and all these kinds of things. Whereas similarly, in the case of Bangladesh, the conversations that we were having were the use of digital technologies for mobilizing solidarities, and the role that plays in student protests, and kind of like shaping political voices. So again, digital technologies, but two completely different roles, right? Warfare and resistance and solidarities again. So that's really interesting if we are trying to sort of creatively draw connections. But that then also does allow us to think about, for instance, like I mean, climate kind of does play a really important role, because it's something that we don't, it's the thing that's less talked about in the conversation about digital things, because where exactly, I mean, I don't even know the answer to this, but like in what region exactly are materials being extracted, or whatever these big kind of plants being established to kind of run all of these digital technologies. Like, what is the environmental cost of the digital technologies, which we haven't, I mean, some people have started talking about this, but it's still kind of the lesser talked aspect of digital technologies, whether used for warfare or used for resistance and mobilization. And again, that's another way of kind of drawing in different sort of connections between non-European, non-American sort of parts of the world to do a global history.
Thank you so much. I would like to turn to our last question before I open up the roundtable, which is a question directed mostly to students who have completed the Global History Lab last year. I asked you, in what ways did your location, so Lebanon and Ukraine respectively, or community influence your choice of topic and perspective for your GHL oral history project? For the context, the Global History Lab concludes with individual research. Students have the chance to conduct their own research project. Our main methodology is oral history. That's what we prepare students for, and they all produce fascinating research projects by the end of the academic year. So I would like to ask our students, but the teaching fellows can also reflect on this. How do you think your location influenced what topic you chose? Marta, please.
Yes, thank you. So I think I was one of the students whose topic was the most influenced by my location, because my research was actually about traditional cuisine of Easter holiday in my in the village I was born in, essentially. And I remember that I tried to make this research a little bit more global by adding touches of comparing it to the Soviet cuisine in general, like how it was like maybe how some Soviet I don't know traditions of eating food during holidays, during celebration, how it influenced Ukrainian cuisine and essentially cuisine in my village. But yes, I think that my location was really something that played the main part in my research, because it was very, very sentimental to me also.
Thank you, Anastasia.
I'm not sure about Stephanie because she's still in the first semester of the program, so she probably hasn't started writing the essay, the work yet. But I think that all of our texts were, like Marta said, connected to where we were from and connected to Ukraine in particular. I think mine was a little bit more global than Marta's because my topic was it had to do with hygienic practices in the USSR and whether they in any way differed depending on the nationality of the people that I interviewed, because it was an oral history project. And while a lot of the people that I interviewed were from different nationalities, so for example, Ukrainian, Jewish, Uzbek, and Crimean Tatar, they were still all connected to the Ukrainian territories. They either lived in Ukraine, they were influenced by migration within the USSR and within the post-Soviet space. And all of those people also, I had a personal connection with them. So I think that we all, while I tried to make the project diverse, we were all connected in, I think, a mutual understanding of what the USSR was to us, how we viewed it, how we viewed general practices within it. And I think that this is probably one of the biggest ways in which my research was influenced by my location and by my personal standpoints. So yes.
Thank you, Anastasia. Giva?
Okay, so basically my project was about the impact of Beirut explosion on the mental health of teenagers. So coming from Lebanon, a country shaped by conflict, resilience, and cultural diversity, many communities deeply influenced the way I approach global history projects. So living in a place that has witnessed war, migration, and recovery made me see how global issues always have local faces. When I worked on my global history lab oral history project, I wanted to highlight voices like that are often unheard, such as the mental health of teenager post the explosion, post the blast that happened in Beirut, and to highlight the people whose everyday experiences reflect larger global patterns such as inequality, mental health, the struggles, or rebuilding after crisis. My perspective was shaped by seeing how ordinary individuals navigate instability, um, yet still find ways to create meaning, hope, and solidarity.
Thank you so much. Hadil?
Yes, thank you. All projects listed were very interesting. My project was written in times of COVID, so when we were facing a crisis on the healthcare infrastructure. My project compared cancer treatment between Lebanon, my country, and the US, given their advanced systems, yet also kind of needing some improvement given their non-free healthcare or the privilege to access this healthcare by insurance. Given the current or the past status of Lebanon during that time, I touched on treatment delays in Lebanon, on the culture of treatment between here and the US, how ethical it was for doctors to emphasize with their patients and how their families stood beside them here in Lebanon, whereas in the US it was looked at as the American is better when in reality the only support system were their therapists that they had to pay for. So it was a time of reflection rather than a time of inspiration because it was the current moment that these events were happening and we were witnessing the collapse of healthcare systems during COVID. To address the current status, I left the course asking Sir Jeremy to keep on doing further and further research because as we progress, new topics are coming up and new interests as well. So I would encourage anyone who's taking the course now to maybe explore a bit on how technology during wars has affected different regions. So, for example, when the youth of Nepal overthrew their governments, they used communication channels, VPNs, they coordinated information using such technology, whereas here in Lebanon or Gaza, the Middle East is a colonial term I hate to mention, but it's an RR word. It was used against us for killing, for this inhumane act. So I would really encourage exploring that as well.
Thank you so much, Hadil. I completely agree. Once you answer some questions, new questions pop up. That's beauty of research. I would like to thank for this rich conversation all of our roundtable members, roundtable speakers, and I saw some hands raised during the conversation, so I'm very happy to open the floor to all our audience for 10 to 15 minutes maybe to comment on what our speakers, the teaching fellows and the students said during the panel, and please ask if you have any questions directed to individual speakers or the whole panel. Pauline.
Hi, my name is Pauline Levy. I'm a student at Sapienza in Rome. And I think for me, what I really took away from this discussion was the comments that you made on the kind of colonial aspect of history. And I think one point that really stuck out to me is in some of last week's reading was the impact of the encyclopedia and how that was kind of created as a concept for Europeans to foster new information about unknown individuals and communities as well as tribal groups around the world. And I think if anything, I have to ask kind of the students and the teachers, how do you ensure that you don't only source a single view of data? In the sense, how do you make sure that your research is multicultural?
Wow, big question. And thank you very much for also reflecting on our textbook and our History of the Word course, which we're all doing in GHL. Any panel members would like to answer this question? Anastasia?
Yes, thank you. I think that it is you really have to look at the roles different actors play in your research, and only when sort of not your native agency is on the same level, I would say, as your native agency. Only in this way will your research be truly global and multicultural. Because if someone else's viewpoint only serves to prove your native point, as I would say, I don't know if this makes sense, but if you look at it from your perspective, which is a very common thing for historians, but I believe that if you're writing research and you do not consult with people who you are writing about, it will be a very flawed research. If you do not know native language and if you do not try to translate it correctly, as correctly as you can, then those are, yeah, really bad starting points for a research.
I kind of have a secondary question on top of that, because we were talking a lot about kind of modern technologies and how do we kind of escape the kind of plot holes and possible footholes that come with generative AI, that come with kind of fake news and fake history being kind of presented to us on such a global scale that we've never seen before. How do we kind of moderate our research?
Nadia?
Yes, thank you. I would like to touch on the first point regarding how can we make our research local or gaining more attention rather than just a global one. There's a speaker that said during the first couple minutes that history, I'm sorry, I forget the name. If it's you, please do say so. That history is a collection of biased opinions, and the more you collect, the more history you can find. Yes, thank you, Nia. I'm sorry if I butchered your name. That was very insightful, and I would encourage us rethinking about what Nia said, because it is truly a collection of biased opinions. And when referring to AI, I think that's the only time where this collection of biased opinions are gathered. So I would additionally, any information that you get, you wouldn't get it from AI directly, and you'd actually get it from a trusted source or validated from a local source. So those you're doing interviews with, for example, you can ask them directly to validate if this is true, if they have experienced a certain thing. So, for example, in my research, there's one patient who had experienced treatment delays, and I've heard about them in the news, but I asked the participant to confirm, like, how did treatment delays happen? Was it a local issue that recurs every once in a while in the country, or was it restricted to COVID in specific? So, encouraging dialogue with your interviewees.
Thank you very much. Nia.
So, Pauline brought up amazing points, and that I think they're very interesting to think about in general. And speaking of biases again, you mentioned a very interesting point about the global history being Eurocentric, which I found very interesting and intriguing, because when you say global history, correct me if I'm wrong, the first thing that comes to my mind is the House of Wisdom in Baghdad. So what is very interesting is that we get the non-Eurocentric idea about global history, and that is one of the primal sources of what we have in the history of the world, as one might call it. So would any of you who has much more knowledge about this than me think that the fact that we say global history can be Eurocentric is also biased understanding of the global history in general? Thank you so much. I'm from Sapienza, by the way. I forgot to introduce myself.
No, thank you so much. And I also encourage everyone who speaks to please say where you're from. And thank you for this very sharp and provocative question. Anyone? From our panel or from our audience? We very much welcome anyone from our audience to please comment, react.
Maybe I will answer the question about the AI that Pauline posed us. To be honest, I still keep asking myself if we should overcome somehow AI or ChatGPT or other things. But at the same time, I keep asking if we should do this, or maybe we can reconcile with it and adapt it somehow to our needs. I think this is like more useful track than try to resist to it. And to fight with it, because in some way, like some of these new tools can be very useful for historians, especially working, with oral history or with some other directions of history. So this is still an open question, but believe me, every year when we have a general meeting for all teaching fellows, we keep asking ourselves this question: how we can reduce the usage of ChatGPT among like the students, or do something else. And always Marcia is asking us, should we do this, or maybe we can try to work still with it. Maybe we can ask and make some algorithms for AI, how it can actually help students to work even more effectively while they're working on their research. So this is still an open question. Honestly, I don't think that someone has like a clear answer on how to do this. And regarding this thing about bias, honestly, I was like so surprised, and I will Google this House of Wisdom in Baghdad, because this is honestly, I didn't have this stereotype about global history. I always thought about something, yes, like British Empire, like, or maybe colonialism as well, but not, yeah. So maybe in some way you're right, but I still don't have an answer to it. I still have to reflect on this and think a little bit more. But thank you. This was, very interesting, experience.
Thank you. Daria?
Hello, everyone. As an informatics student, I feel like I can add something to the discussion regarding AI. And I just wanted to mention that it is very prone to sycophancy, like repeating the user's opinion. And it is something that AI researchers couldn't fix. And I feel like we should be extremely careful in using AI in research purposes, because it also can be very biased, and it is not something that we can yet control. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Daria, which university are you from again? Which partner?
I am from Lithuania, European Humanities one.
Okay, thank you very much. Nia.
So I will quickly follow up on my personal question, if that's okay. So speaking of belittling other nations, Hati helped us so well with doing the research and understanding how belittling of, at the same time, Indigenous Americans was not the correct way to approach the subject. So I think we have the same situation with the global history and understanding of the evolution of global history in general, because we always belittle, not we always, it's just instilled in our minds that the Europe is always capable of doing things that other nations are not. So when I say the House of Wisdom in Baghdad, and it was primarily about the literature, but also very importantly in the history, what I was trying to get across is that we belittle other nations, and that's why we do not always think about global history originating from the other parts of the world, be it Baghdad, be it China, India, which is the cradle of the civilization in so many ways. So yeah, I just wanted to follow up with that, because if we do not belittle the Indigenous Americans of the time and say that they were just nice and very open-hearted, I think it has to be evolved in the sense that we do not belittle other nations as in having the capabilities to create something global or something multicultural in general. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Aayushi?
Yeah, I wanted to add to what Nia is saying, is because I think it is actually a really interesting point, and I think there is some value to perhaps thinking, maybe shifting the center, but also maybe thinking about sort of global history within other other powers. And I mean, I've just recently been reading a book about the Indian Empire or South Asia and its several partitions. And it is quite interesting when you look at regional dynamics, how India, who Nia, you called the cradle of civilization, which I wouldn't really call it that anymore, but you know, it does really act as an imperial power. It does have its own Cold War sort of dynamics in the middle and after the 20th century, with the ways it's getting involved in Bangladesh, with the ways it's getting involved in Sri Lanka, its proxy wars, and you really do see it function as quite like Britain, if not entirely like that. And I think there really is some value in perhaps, yes, thinking about similar sort of, yeah, kind of global history, but regional dynamic kind of thing.
Thank you very much. I just would like to say that we have not much left, maybe 5 to 10 minutes, just to really stretch our time. So I would like to ask anyone who, you know, if there's still something on your mind, please raise your hand. I saw someone raising their hand. Helen, yes, please.
Hello, I am from Greece. I am from PADI on
Hi.
political science and history. So it's more of like a question regarding on the center of the discussion, which is, as I understand, now the main problematic that we're discussing now, the what is considered to be like the center of history. Why do we choose in like main history a center like Europe, like Nia said, or whatever? But isn't that like dependent on the historical context and in the political power and strength that has each historical subject in that time period? For instance, not only in history and in the present, as we see all those forces globally emerging, and new powers becoming like big economic powers, like China surpassing the US, for instance. So isn't it based on context? That's my question.
Thank you very much. Very good question. Anyone from our panel or from our audience? Muhtasim? Ahmed? I'm sorry, I'm not sure which name you use.
Yeah, so I kind of agree with Helen because in JSL, I think we read the history from the 1300th century, and the Islamic global age basically ends in 1300th century, and the Christian golden age begins from there. So I think it kind of depends on the context, and I think Neil or someone mentioned about the House of Wisdom. That was also during the age of Islam, Islamic age, Islamic golden age. So that was the House of Wisdom was destroyed by the Mongols, I think around 1200 or some around that time. So I think it also it actually depends on the context. And before the Islamic age, I think there was Mesopotamia or Greece, places like that. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Maybe, okay. I see 2 hands raised, and I'm going to conclude this part with the 2 of them. So there's Zagir and there's Hannah. So Zagir, please go first, and then Hannah. I'm not sure you're here with us, but maybe then Hannah, please go ahead.
Thank you. So I have a question to anyone who would like to answer. So how do you see the future of global history during the nearest years, maybe in the next decade or something? How would you predict the future of the global history? How do you see it?
Any reflections? Zakir, if you have a technical problem, I see your message. You can also just type your message, type your answer in the chat. We don't have much time left, but if you have a short comment, please just type that in the chat box. And while you're doing that, I just want to ask our panel now to let us know if you have any kind of last round of reflections on today's topic, any of the questions, anything we discussed today. Just very briefly, if you want to, if you really want to something that maybe we haven't mentioned today.
I'd quite like to add something which may have a response to, you know, what is the future of global history. That I think, Hannah, I think that's what you asked. I may be wrong, but I really like the idea, you know, I think someone raised the question of how do we sort of approach the multivocality, if you will, or like the different voices that we need to listen to when we're doing global history. And I know like AI sort of looms large as this kind of dystopian threat, which we don't really know what to do with. It's a bit of a Pandora's box kind of thing. But I also really think that there are some things that we as historians, as scholars can, you know, that's solely really our responsibility. And it's, you know, when we are kind of thinking about doing history, writing history, it's kind of to address the multiplicity of voices and biases, is to sort of ask who I mean, in the history or the topic that we are kind of thinking about, who have we not heard from? So whose voices are missing? And that really, you know, that kind of allows quite a lot of room for including some of those biases, and you know, AI can do that for us, but also it can't. Like, you know, if I work on South Asia, for example, and if quite a lot of those big textbooks that I'm reading, they all seem to be largely by non-South Asians, then I make it a thing that no, I am going to try to find theses published within South Asia, and I want to know what people in the region are saying about what is happening in the region. And you know, AI can not really do that as a responsibility for us, right? It's an ethic that we as researchers and historians cultivate. Are there women's voices missing? Are there kind of you know, are there if this is about a refugee crisis, and who is the narrative being conveyed from, and who, you know, whose bias is it, and whose voices are we not listening? It really is up to us to identify the missing voices and then make an effort to find them. I mean, AI can't really do that for us. You know, there are ways that we know where to find those voices. Some of those are in the library, and some of those are on the streets. Like, Eva, you walked up to people and you asked them, like, I want to know what happened to you know, what was your experience of the explosion? And AI won't be able to help you locate those people. You have to go and do it yourself, right? And you know, like if I'm doing some kind of research, I know that there is AI is not going to help me find theses published in India. I know there is like some very niche, super specific bank that I have to go and find them in, right? So it's really our responsibility to kind of find those sources. And yeah, I think I was going somewhere there with that, making a comment about the future of global history.
Thank you. Hadil? I just would like to ask, I see Hadil, Giva, and there's Tanisha. Please give some brief concluding comments, because we're going to need to finish soon, but I really want to hear your reflections.
Yes, the only thing I want to add to what Aayushi had said is that we hope to see the center of power for global history shift, because when I said that the Middle East was a colonial term and that I wouldn't prefer to use it, is because it was the Middle East in reference to the West, because we were colonies of Britain and of France. So when we shift our vocabulary and our center of power from the West to other regions, treating them as equals and valid, I think that's when we do achieve the global lens that we're looking for.
Thank you. Tanisha?
Completely agree with Aayushi in case of using AI. I think is coming from a computer science background. I'm doing a research paper on it. How AI AI model hallucinate, or they sometimes be biased on their decision. They sometimes take resources and manipulate those answers, and those might not be the right one. They might give us the past answer, and we might not know the correct one. So as Aayushi said, that we can look around us and ask people who actually know things, or also we have resources from authentic authors. We can collect it from in case of historic materials. We can collect resources from there as well to know more about the background formations. So yeah, solely being based on AI is not correct approach in this course, of course.
Okay, thank you. Gita?
I would like just to sum up in a brief sentence. Aayushi said it all. Regarding, I noticed that Pauline has left, so I just want to like to add a just quick note that regarding the bias, as Aayushi said, I can't Google or I can't ask ChatGPT for interviews people and gave me their phone numbers. I can contact them. This is something related to bias, and Aayushi said it all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ania.
I will briefly say something about adopting and domesticizing things. You know much better than I do, I'm sure, but what I was thinking about is what were Africans thinking when they domesticized court for the first times in their life? So they had to adapt to something new. What were the people thinking when calculator was invented? Right? They thought that it was the end of the world at that time. So I think that as we develop, humans have this very good power of ruling things and using it to their advantage. Do you not think that AI can be quote unquote domesticized and used to our advantage as long as we control it?
Thank you very much. I just think of Asfad's comment in the chat. Global history helps us see the world as an interconnected whole, showing that every culture and event contributes to the shared story of humanity. I think that's a good concluding word for us. I'm very, very pleased about this discussion. I think this was extremely rich and informative, very, very thought-provoking. And as we suggested at the beginning, we're going to end this with maybe even more questions. As the course coordinator of the Global History Lab, I was really, really happy to organize this session, and I'm very thankful for the contribution of our panelists and our teaching fellows, and also our audience. Thank you so much for being here, listening, speaking, asking questions, and commenting. And I would like to welcome you to our next episode. I'm going to send out information soon about when it's going to take place. Thank you so much again, and see you next time.